seconds. I'll be right back.
Sure. Yeah, like Babak said, we use Google Hangouts, and I actually had met some of you last week, I think it was, or 2 weeks ago, with Saeed on at Netflix, and I think now I know Saeed uses Zoom more than I do because he presented and he didn't have to set anything up. So apologies, but we're gonna have plenty of time for open conversation and Q&A. We're trying to keep our portion really short. Mostly just wanted to share which teams that we are working on, what we do at Netflix, no more than maybe 5 minutes. We're both hiring managers. So I think we can hopefully provide some insight in terms of either how we individually interview with our teams, because we're actually both different domains. Like I'm on the engineering side, and Babak is on the operations side for the content organization. And so hopefully we can give some different insights into how both of us interview for our teams. But I think more importantly, we wanted to keep it an open forum and give the opportunity for people here to ask questions and have a dialogue. So we kind of kept the agenda somewhat unstructured for that reason.
Thanks everyone for waiting. Let me see if I can share my screen now. So if all goes well, you should be seeing yourself now, or at least part of my deck.
Yep, we can see it.
Beautiful. Okay. All right. So Kamyar probably gave a little bit of initial run through already of what we're trying to get out of this. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining. Basically, we would like to just start off with telling you a little bit about ourselves and then going into actual theme. Kamyar, please go ahead.
Yeah, so we're excited to be here and share our experiences. Like I mentioned before Babak hopped on, just want to give some brief intros, and then we can dive into open Q&A about interviewing. But I'm Kamyar. I manage the messaging engineering team at Netflix, and I can tell you a little bit about what our team does, as well as like how I sort of ended up at Netflix, and quick summary of my LinkedIn, I guess. So I've been working since 2004, graduated then, and spent a lot of years as an individual contributor working on a range of different companies. I tend to, I think, gravitate towards companies that are somewhat impactful from like a large user base, or at least those are the companies that I've like had the best memories from. So I generally like to work on technology or products that reach a lot of people. So I spent the first few years kind of moving into different domains to kind of see what I like. I worked on mortgage software for a little bit. I also worked at MySpace. For those that are old enough to remember, used to exist before there was a thing called Facebook. You can create your own like HTML pages. So that was fun. And then from there, I kind of made the big jump to move to the Bay Area in 2012 to get a job at LinkedIn. And I think that was kind of pivotal for me because it was a right time to join the company. It was just after IPO. And it was at LinkedIn where I really got to really be exposed to problems of scale, much more so than MySpace. And it was also there where I made that pivotal career move to go from an IC over to an engineering manager. And that was in 2015. And then after that, had a very quick stint at Lyft for about a year or so before they went IPO. And then Netflix attracted me in 2017 to manage their messaging engineering team. And then Babak, if you don't mind, next slide.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the reason why I joined messaging specifically is because of the fact that it's very consumer facing, and you get to solve a lot of different problems. So if you think about all the notifications experiences, email experiences, SMS, WhatsApp, and even the in-app experiences as a user, that's basically what we do. Like we notify subscribers about great things to watch, about movies and shows that are on the service. And we also let people who aren't on the service know that Netflix is a great service and you should be a subscriber. So we kind of are really all over the place as far as driving both growth and engagement for the company. And then so my team mostly focuses on the delivery platform. So essentially how we deliver notifications to our customers. And then another team that I manage focuses on the machine learning driven recommendation systems that decide what to send you, so that hopefully we can be very thoughtful in the messages we do send to you, and that we're not over, notifying you. I guess I could use the word spam. We don't want to spam you. So I've been really happy over the last 3 years because we've been able to scale both our program as well as our team. And yeah, that's basically the summary from my side.
Cool. My name is Babak, Andishmand. I was born in Tehran. I came to Amsterdam at a very young age, and I spent some time in the US as well. I graduated in network engineering and I'm very sorry. Looney. I did a lot of different things. So I studied network engineering, then I went to art school and studied film. And then I also studied Persian literature in university. So I kind of tried a lot of different things and eventually got back into tech, but managed to get different aspects from all those different backgrounds into the same position, which was very serendipitous. And around the time where I was actually thinking of studying at US when I was younger, I actually looked into opportunities through Parse Equality Center. So it's very, very nice to once again cross paths with Parse about 12 years later in my life. So I spent a lot of time in New York City working for different organizations and companies. The Society of Motion Picture and Television Engineers, they're kind of the technical standard in the world for broadcasting and film formats. And they had kind of an academic paper every quarter that they released about the new mediums, codecs, and technical aspects of film. That's where I worked for a while. And then I also worked as the executive producer of the Take-Two Film Festival, which was a nonprofit film festival, which showed annually 56 movies from 14 different countries, including Iran. And I also worked at other organizations until making my way to Netflix in April of 2019. So that's a little bit about me. It's really, you end up at Netflix, it's in the course of your journey in life that you end up there. And this is kind of how we ended here, which is these are very unorthodox kind of ways where you kind of get your foot in the door. And I'm very curious to hear to what way we can facilitate this meeting to kind of share our experience with you and what you would like to get out of this. So I'm sure that everyone is in a different stage in their lives. Some people may have recently graduated, other people may already have been in the industry for quite some time. And both of us are in the positions where we hire people. So we're on the other side of the table where we kind of can share a little bit of our thought process of what we look for, what we think of when we are in an interview. That's very specific, however, to Netflix, and however also to our teams, which can be very different at other companies. Netflix is probably the most unusual company in that regard. So I hope if that makes sense to all of you. If I can leave the podium kind of open and see if there's anything we can hear from you of what you would like to get out of this session.
Yeah, and we can talk about anything. We can talk about either individually as hiring managers, what's kind of the more the interview process. I don't know how much gleaning you'll get from that, but what we kind of look for and what we do in terms of hiring managers to get folks. But we can also talk about, from our own perspective, like our interview experiences, not just at Netflix, but at other companies. Or we can even talk about in the world of COVID and everything being over VC, how that's changed interviewing and what sort of skills you need to strengthen in order to become more successful. Or we can even talk about like LinkedIn and updating your profile. So we're kind of open-ended here. It could be anything.
Or any challenges you're currently facing in the course of trying to find that ideal job that you're looking for, right? And sharing some of that sentiment and seeing how that could be kind of discussed.
Kamyar and Babak, and I guess I start. I have a general questions. So since the starting of this pandemic, and now that everything is happening online, What are your general suggestions to have a successful online interview? I know it's really general, but I just want to get your feedback about it.
I can go first, Babak. So just because I actually interviewed someone before this, so it's like fresh on my mind. So again, this is kind of more specific to engineering, but what I really like to tell people is, since everything is done virtually and through your computer, really take the time to kind of ensure that your environment, your computer setup, and you're really familiar with the tools that the company that you're interviewing for requires you to use to specifically for like the technical side of the interview, solving problems. So I've seen it multiple times happen during COVID, where unfortunately like a candidate didn't spend enough time getting comfortable with Collab Edit or one of the other like web IDEs that we rely on to write code while they're doing the interview. And they end up struggling much more with the environment than they would trying to solve the problem. And it's tough, not only for the candidate, but it's also hard for the interviewer too, because they want the candidate to be successful, and they'd rather spend the conversation talking about the problem as opposed to getting it set up. So I think just the first thing on top of my head, because I saw it recently, is if you're going through an interview, particularly if it's an engineering interview, if the recruiter hasn't told you what sort of tools you have to have set up on your computer, just ask, because you'll just be set up nicely and then you won't have to go into it with any problems. I'm not sure, Babak, if you wanted to say anything else on that.
Yeah, and in other than the technical aspect, we're all trying to figure this out together. This is the first time for all of us, right? Every single company. Every company has their own interviewing style and setup, but in terms of making sure you can kind of compensate for the fact that you're not face-to-face, we're all trying to do that, right? So it's a two-way street. I forgot to go into actually what I do at Netflix. So I'm a production support manager. So my team does technical support tier 1 for kind of the entire front line of internal and external, some external partners also using certain apps within Netflix used for production, post-production, promotion, from, as we call, pitch to play. That's a very kind of general and very unusual position. There are not a lot of companies that do this. So it's hard to kind of apply for a position that you don't have a good reference point for. And I think the best thing to do is really ask a lot of questions, even to follow up. It can never hurt to kind of, if you're really curious, to kind of get not only answer questions, but also be maybe like, hey, what would you have answered if you were asked those questions? So there's not a straight satisfying answer I can give that would be like the key to success, unfortunately. It's really depends. Even if there was, it really depends on the person as well. We're all struggling to kind of figure that out.
Thank you. Dustan, if you have any questions, you can ask your question, or you can write it in the chat box and I can read it for you. So the forum is open. Bitajan, please go ahead.
Can I ask a question?
Sure. Let's Bitajan ask first, because she was raising her hand, and then we'll get to you for sure. I'll to that.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Parsiquality, for arranging this. And thank you, Babak and Kamyar. Nice to meet you, Babak. I think I've met Kamyar before in the previous session. My question here is, so I had an interview last year with Netflix, and it was just the initial interview. How that will affect my upcoming, like if I schedule another, how that history will affect forward or future decisions. It was just an initial interview with the team. Yeah, we didn't proceed with that. But yeah, I just want to know how much that would affect the future process.
It shouldn't have any effect. I mean, you should apply for as often as you like. There are different teams that go over different aspects of different roles. Obviously, there's one system where everything is stored, but it really depends if I could imagine it's hard to see from your side, but I personally have applied more than once to Netflix before I actually, joined Netflix. So it's there are a lot of people that apply. So it's hard to kind of make a selection eventually and try to kind of narrow it down. So I would just say keep on trying.
Yeah, I'll plus one that. Like we have, I don't know how unique it is to Netflix, but it's definitely different than a lot of companies in that each hiring manager is responsible for building out their team. And so as a result, we don't have a central sort of hiring process, which means that if you do end up going to the full interview process or even just a phone screen with a particular team, and it has nothing to do or doesn't have any kind of weight towards your candidacy to another team. And in fact, there have been many situations where I will pivot a candidate to another team because they may have better skills for that team, or it's actually happened the other way. In fact, one of the engineers on my team went through the full, rounds with an engineering team, didn't make it. I took a look at their background and they're on my team now for the last 2 years and he's doing fantastic. So like it definitely happens more often than you think because at the end of the day, hiring is really hard. So, any kind of advantage we can get as hiring managers to reach out to candidates. I actually like it when somebody else talks to a candidate because then they've done some of the bulk of the work already to do some of the interviews. And then I can look at the feedback and then say, oh, okay, the things that are important for this team aren't important for me. So let me go talk to them.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Payman, I think you're muted. Yeah.
Thank you, Babak. Alaya Turaj, please go ahead, ask your question.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I don't know, maybe you call from different cities, but my question is, I'm an international student and I'm graduating soon in like 20 days. And the bad thing is it happens during pandemic and I'm looking for a job actively, and most of my background is in Iran. So as you definitely know, there is no reference that they can straight like email or phone call to Iranian companies, and we don't have that much of a background that exists in other countries. I would like to know if you guys care about that so much of my background, and then if you guys do deny application just solely because it's international student and it needs the sponsorship in the future.
Thank you, Turaj. Before I start, I just want to say, take everything we say with a grain of salt because every team works in a different way. I can speak for myself that I've never had to ask someone for a referral. Like that's not typically what we do. Even the application, you may have noticed, those of you that have applied, it doesn't ask for a cover letter or an introduction of who you are and why you want to apply. It just asks for your resume. So my team, and I'm not sure about Kamyar, but my team has never gone as far as asking for a referral. And we don't take it into consideration unless it's offered. And so I wouldn't be too worried about that. It sounds like a tough situation if you're ending your student visa and wanting to kind of not have to face that challenge, especially in this time. So I think there shouldn't be anything stopping you from applying.
Yeah, it's just really quickly. It's the same for us too. I've never asked for a what do they call it? Like a referral or like a background check or anything like that in terms of where you previously worked. Never done that. And then, Turaj, you asked about like not talking to someone because of sponsorship. We don't do that either. Like we don't not talk to somebody because they require sponsorship. So, you'll talk to the recruiter, you'll let them know your work situation if they ask, but that's not something that like we actively like avoid during sourcing when we're trying to find candidates.
And Turaj, I wish you all the best in this time as well.
Thank you for your answer. I really appreciate it, and I'm really proud to see people like you doing this. It's just like really helpful and supportive, because I always used to say, oh, we Persians, we don't have each other's back. But now I see you guys do this. I'm really, it's kind of, you see how you have a support outside of Iran too. So there are people that give you knowledge and experience that I guess my generation needs to, learn from you guys or from any other sources. Thank you so much.
Of course.
All right,
Go ahead.
please. Sorry.
Hello, good morning. Yeah, similar to Reg, I'm also in my job search, but I'm currently looking for an entry-level role as a software engineer. So I'm curious to know, as hiring managers, what suggestion and advice you might have for me, because I know that I'm not currently qualified for the roles at Netflix, but I'd like to build and work on those qualities that one day when I'm more qualified to apply, I'd like to know basically what are the things you'd like to see in a candidate, particular about engineering roles or in general. That would be very great.
Yeah, I guess I could answer that. You're right. In general, Netflix, we hire people with experience, which is definitely, most companies aren't like that. But I could tell you, as a hiring manager at other companies where I did have entry level or new college grads, as we call them, I've hired them and have had them on my team. You're right. The experience isn't there necessarily, right, in terms of like the work experience. So from my past, what I generally looked at was, what are some of the other things that you did during your time in university? So for example, the projects that you worked on, if you had internships, that's also like a great sort of signal. And you tend to rely a lot on the performance of your like interview. So if you're interviewing, going through like a full round, we look at the coding and we look at the design, like architecture questions as a real signal, because you don't have like necessarily that work experience, and we don't expect you to have that work experience either. So I think I wouldn't worry too much, because there are a lot of companies that hire new college grads or entry level, and they look for that. And they also know that you don't have that prior experience. So I think if I were in your shoes, like, if you do have any internship experience or project experience in university, highlight those, use those as like a reference when you talk to a recruiter or hiring manager about the experiences that you had. They're looking mostly for aptitude, right? They're looking for potential. They know that you don't have that experience. And then of course, as with any engineering interview, kind of brush up on the coding interviews and the architecture interviews. And that's pretty much what you can do.
Yeah, plus one to that. Sorry.
Can
Yeah,
I ask my question?
Sure. I just wanted
hi,
to add.
everyone. Yes.
Just a second.
Yeah.
Babak would like to add something, and then for sure we'll get to you. Babak, please go ahead.
Thank you. Just wanted to add to what Kamyar said. It's definitely not easy to start off within a company like Netflix. They kind of, the tendency is what they mentioned, kind of seeing themselves as the dream team of the best people they can find within the market. Like in Persian terms, you would consider it like having Istiklal or Persepolis instead of some small town team, But I would say that shouldn't still stop you. It's really about the interview as well. If you get to that point, you may talk to different people, and each of those people that you'll talk to in that process may look for different things. So it's not necessarily just about your technical aptitude or your your experience. I'm not sure if you have read kind of about the Netflix culture. There's a lot of information out there, and it's good to know kind of what kind of company Netflix is, if you would consider to ever apply for Netflix in particular, or any company, really, to know a little bit about the culture of that company.
Thank you. Khanum Nawa, please go ahead.
Okay, yes. Hi, everyone. I have a question. I am new here in the US and I have about 16 years of experience. My job experience all was in Iran. I studied computer hardware engineering, and after that, I studied MBA. And my job experience was in different domains in networking engineering, hardware engineering, sales and marketing, project management, and Scrum Master. I want to know, because of COVID and the environment and everything that is changing, I want to know in which domain I will have most chance for getting a good job. And also I want to know if I want to start entry level, I am overqualified, or is there any chance that I start with big companies, or should I start with small ones and after that upgrade? Because I don't have any experience here.
It's a tough question. I can't give you one straight answer, but I would never stop you or discourage you from applying anywhere. It's I think, especially in the US, like, it's not very conventional that certain companies will only look for certain things. I would just try anything that you think you can really see yourself working at. So if you feel like you're overqualified for certain positions, or you want to find an entry level, even though you have quite an amount of experience in Iran, if you have that amount of experience, nothing should stop you from looking for senior positions as well. Just because it was in Iran shouldn't be an issue if you work for some of the companies there, even if those companies may not necessarily ring a bell with who may be hiring you. Then maybe you can explain what those companies were about in the numbers and the kind of market value in certain things, to say, this is kind of what I did and this is the role I played. For Netflix, as we mentioned, it doesn't have a lot of entry level positions, but it's based on your resume, it doesn't sound like you should necessarily start entry level.
Okay, thank you. And about the field of the job, what do you think it has? Which of them has good marketing? For example, next year, engineering, business development, project management.
I really can't answer that question confidently. I think that a lot of positions will be a mix of different things that you just mentioned. Some of it will be back-end engineering, some of it will be development, support, structure. If you read me like really quickly through your resume, I can't really say, okay, this is a good position. I would just really encourage you to go to our website and look at the positions that are available and see what matches your experience or your interest as well, what you think you gravitate towards in terms of a position.
And do you think being multitasking can be a competitive advantage?
Did you say multitasking?
Yes, for example, working both in business development side and project management, or assuming different kinds of responsibilities, or having experience in different fields. Does it work or not, or does it make any value?
So it sounded a little distorted, but what I think I understand is whether it would help to have a background or experience with multitasking, doing different things like project management and such. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't sound like too much information. It's always good to know. It's not particularly useful compared to other scenarios that you would mention. It's just another good asset that you could list in your resume, it sounds.
And what do you think generally can make competitive advantage among the volunteers?
I'm very sorry, but I can't, I couldn't understand what you said. Quality of the line doesn't sound too good.
For example, having experience in different domains helps more, or for example, so if someone has just experience in engineering or just in a specific field has less chance in comparison with someone who has experience in different fields, for example, project management, engineering, and business development.
It really depends on the job description, you know, whatever matches. Too much experience is never too much, right? So if you have someone like myself, I have a lot of experience in fields that aren't necessarily directly relevant to my role, but it still helps me in some way. It's not going to damage my eligibility for a role. So I wouldn't say scrap certain things off of your background because you think it's not directly relevant. I would more focus on the kind of things that you feel like match your background, similar things you did back in Iran, and similar things you may not necessarily have experienced yet fully and would like to further grow in. You know.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Thank you, Babak and Kamyar. I just have one more general question for both as hiring managers. What are some questions that you think a job seeker must ask during an interview?
I guess for my, like, I don't want to be 100% prescriptive as far as like what to ask, because I would, because again, it depends on the hiring manager and the team and everything. But I think in general, I would go as far as to say that having genuine curiosity, so not like pretending, but actually being interested in the job, the function, the people you'd work with, the partners you'd have, that really does demonstrate this like enthusiasm about the job that you're interviewing for. So really taking the time to dig into like the job description, or based on maybe what the recruiter or the hiring manager told you, come up with some questions around that really goes a long way. It shows the hiring manager that like you've contemplated this, you've meditated on it, and you're not just like interviewing with 10 companies and hoping to get the best offer, which there's nothing wrong with that. But like as a hiring manager, you're also talking to a lot of candidates. So you kind of want to like stick out in some ways. So I think as far as questions go, from my perspective, things that are curiosity around the role itself that may not be so obvious in the job description really shows that you're like, you're invested in the interview process.
Yeah, and in addition to what Kamyar says, I personally wouldn't want to basically, you have a limited amount of time, right? It's a very unique opportunity when you're in an interview. You want to use that time wisely. So you want to make sure you don't ask a question for which the information is widely available. You ideally would answer a question that only the hiring manager could answer. And Netflix doesn't shy away from the fact that it's a high performance culture, right? So it's a very great experience working for Netflix. Like we even have groups to represent Persians within the company, right? That's very unique. Not every experience for an Iranian outside of Iran as an immigrant or refugee or whatever is as well accommodated and represented. But if it's just the culture you're applying for, then you're never going to really be useful to the company, right? It's the culture facilitating you having a good time, enjoying your work. But the work itself is also, it should be a balance of both, right? So you should also be able to really enjoy the work itself and feel like that's something you're really applying for too.
Great, thank you. Ryan, please go ahead.
Good morning. Hi guys, thank you so much for this webinar. And I'm not an engineer. I'm not in the engineering field. I'm a filmmaker. I'm a graduate of American Film Institute. And I don't know if you guys can answer this, but I was wondering how's the creative side of applying, getting a job in a creative part of Netflix world. I don't know if you guys have any answer for that, but I thought that it's a shot in the dark. Maybe you guys can help. Thank you.
So from what I know, there are content teams that focus on both the originals and the non-originals that we offer, and they decide along with the teams that they work with what gets purchased for which region, right? So that's for the licensed titles that we have, and then for the originals, that's a different story. That's all internal, right? From beginning to end. Kamyar, do you have more context on the exact details about that?
I guess as far as the question goes, what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the question was, what are some things to think about when you're applying or are interested in more on the creative side of Netflix, right? The content side of things.
Yes, I sorry to interrupt. I didn't mean that selling a film to Netflix. I mean, I meant to actually go and work there for
some post-production and stuff like that.
Yeah, something like that, post-production, even production, whatever side of creative that they have. Yes.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Yeah, that would be similar to any other position. So that's simply just, we have separate section of the vacancy in our job page on our website that will be specifically for production. And then there's also production on location. There's production, obviously, post-production, editing, special effects, animation. Those are all positions that we have, which we hire for as well.
Yeah, and I would say, like, obviously, like, I haven't applied for one of those jobs before, but I would say that kind of what I said earlier about doing your homework, so to speak, on the job really will go a long way. And I'm sure for these content roles as well, like, they might have different approach to interviewing you. Like, they might have depending on what it is, of course, I'm sort of making this up, but they might ask for a portfolio of some past work, and just having that kind of prepped ahead of time would put you in I think a better position than someone who doesn't have it. So again, it comes back to asking those questions and getting a good partnership with your recruiting partner so that you're well prepared. Yeah, I'll just second what Babak said. Like, at the end of the day, it's all kind of the same, right? In terms of these roles, you go through the process, and there's certain interview skills that I think are kind of universal across all roles, specifically around culture, communication, how you work well with others, that sort of thing. And then there's like the second part, which is much more specialized in the actual role that you're doing. And then again, like, hopefully if you're applying for something that you're qualified for, you already kind of know what you're getting yourself into. So.
Cool. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. One more question I would like to ask. So in addition to successfully land a job at a company like Netflix and company in that level, other than applying, what are some other hints or suggestions that you can offer, such as following up, networking, and etc.?
I would say stuff like this, there in the California area, there's a lot of representation, right, of Iranian Americans. So last year there was a Persians in Tech event that was organized. I believe there was a Iranian Women in Tech event, if I'm not mistaken, as well, in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yes, that's correct. Yes.
So those are good ways to kind of get your exposure, right, into the company and some of the ways that and the representation and the work that we do. But at the end of the day, it really does come to the theme of this meeting, right? It's really interviewing. So that's how we all start. That's how we all get there.
Yeah, the same thing pretty much. And during the COVID time, it's much harder to join meetups and doing networking, but it's not impossible. So a lot of these things, for example, like Babak said, this webinar is an example of that. They are shifting over to online, whether it's a conference or a meetup. And so seeing like getting connected with people, whether they're like in the audience or they're speakers, puts you that much ahead. I think most people don't do that. Like most people either don't want to put in that time or they don't know. And so the more that you are exposed to different people who are speaking or attending these meetups, the more your network is going to grow. And you never know when that connection is going to blossom. It could take years, it could take a week. So being involved in these types of events and groups is awesome. Babak mentioned Persians in Tech. When we organized that, like we actually ended up getting someone hired because of that event. Of course, it was in person, but still, I think even if had it been online, like someone attended, they liked what they heard, and then they applied, or maybe they met the hiring manager for the security engineering team, and then he ended up getting hired like a month later. So it does happen. Like it does. Like imagine if he didn't attend it, maybe he wouldn't have gotten the job. So I think like anything that you could do to be more involved in online networking, I think will go a long way. And then of course, there's all the other stuff too. There's your LinkedIn profile. There's if you're in marketing, or let's say you're in design, like having a portfolio and have that be like online, like all these little things that you could do to showcase yourself, just as incrementally, like will go a long way to landing that job that you want.
And also knowing the company you're applying for. I said that about every company, but Netflix being very different from a lot of companies is the culture was really an experiment that was disputed by every single expert in the field of HR and psychology, but it worked, and they were proven wrong, And that story is something that the founder of Netflix, Reed Hastings, wrote in his book that recently came out. Regardless of if you would ever entertain the thought of applying for Netflix, I think reading the story of how the culture came about can be very useful for understanding both Netflix as a company as well as other companies in contrast to Netflix. And we have a series of podcasts and YouTube videos that are called We Are Netflix, and there are colleagues just like Kamyar and myself who sit at a table and talk about working at Netflix, how they got to Netflix, and why working at Netflix is so different from working at other companies. So being exposed to those things, as Kamyar said, doing your homework, really knowing the company you're applying for, and you're knowing why you want it, right? If you want it, then you know why. And that's the most important thing, being able to answer that question.
Thank you, Babak Jan. Thank you, Kamyar Jan. Dustan, is there any other questions? I have lots of questions, but yeah. All right. I guess I'm going to ask one more question if you don't mind. So again, as a hiring manager, do you guys look to the LinkedIn profiles of the applicants? And if yes, what do you look and what are your suggestions to have a professional and to the point LinkedIn profile?
It's up to you as an applicant whether how you want to apply. There are two ways. You can upload your resume, or you can you can add your LinkedIn profile, and then it will actually just extract your LinkedIn and show it to us. So either way is optional. For me, it doesn't personally matter as long as it represents your background and what you have done, what you want us to know. So for LinkedIn, it's a lot of people I know are paying for LinkedIn to kind of get an edge and see more and use more of the services. LinkedIn has a lot of the paid feature of LinkedIn allows you to get a lot of education on set things, even coding and developing and all that stuff. But in terms of kind of your profile, a regular LinkedIn profile is good enough as long as it's accurate and up to date. Like if your last employer is from 2 years ago and you already worked somewhere else, I would like to see an accurate ID in LinkedIn, or rather not know about it at all, right? then I would just want to see a PDF that's uploaded instead.
Yeah, and like it's so important to actually have it filled out, the LinkedIn profile. Many times I'll see candidates who just list the company and how long they were there, and I don't have any information on like what they did. And it doesn't matter to me if like, you know, like Google's listed on there or a startup or they did their own thing. If it's not no information, it really doesn't do me any good. So I'll always look at their LinkedIn profile. And what I first hone in on is like their current role or their most recent role, like what they did. And it doesn't have to be like paragraphs, right? It could just be a couple bullets just to give me an idea of like what they worked on. And then again, this is for me specifically. So like take it with a grain of salt. I think every hiring manager is different, but like I care less about like the technology that they use. I care more about what they built or what project they were involved in. Sometimes I look at progression in their career too, like how they kind of progressed, if it's the title or something else. But again, that's less important to me. So, and even less so is like education. Like sometimes I don't even look at where they went to school or what they studied, to be honest with you, because it doesn't, for me, it doesn't matter as much. But again, there might be some other hiring managers where it does. So I think ultimately for LinkedIn, what matters most is have some information on there, because like as a hiring manager, either I'm sourcing or I'm working with my recruiter where they're taking all these profiles, and I don't have that much time. So I need to spend, maybe a couple minutes on each profile to really dig into it. And if there's nothing there, I'm probably going to be more likely to say, you know what, there's no information on this, so I'll pass. Or I'll tell my recruiter, maybe there's a chance that they worked on something interesting, but you have to call them or you have to talk to them first. So I think, it will help you out a long way if you actually put some information on the LinkedIn and on your resume.
Yeah, absolutely. And considering everything that goes on, international relations, sanctions, if you have worked in Iran, don't undersell that. That's substantial as well. Like, not that it's a requirement, but even imagine you worked at Tekrasa as a developer, or so like Digicala, and you don't, if a hiring manager here doesn't know what that is, they'll find out that it's like the equivalent of Amazon, right? And the tech bubble in Iran is one of the most impressive and inventive ones, considering all the obstacles that they deal with. So it's not like you have to have a good resume for your time that you've so far spent in the US. Like, do include the experience, both educational and professional, that you've gained in Iran, if you have any. That's definitely valuable.
Great. Thank you so much. Is there any other questions? The forum is open. All right. It seems like there is no questions. Babak Jan, Kamyar Jan, do you have any final note that you would like to share with us?
I wish everyone all the best in this very difficult time. It's certainly not easy. And if you're kind of between two different chapters in your life, dealing with legal issues, immigration, it's all a lot in general, let alone in COVID. So you certainly have our best wishes. I would encourage any of you who are curious about Netflix in particular to feel free to look into actually our story. It can be a very inspirational story. I personally, before I got into management, before I got into tech, I was really inspired by some initial stories of startups from the 80s and 70s and early 90s that I never worked for them. I never was directly influenced by them, but those stories were very inspirational. And those people gave me kind of an example of continuing and going through a path, even if sometimes it feels like all odds are against you. And I would just, we also didn't just pick a lottery and get to Netflix. It's a masir, it's a route that you go through life until getting here. And keep that in mind. Like, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, and what you probably already know.
Yeah, I also want to say thank you for inviting us and letting us share some of our thoughts. We are no means experts or anything. We all have our own path, including those that are attending. And it's great that we're coming together as a community to share our experiences. As Turaj said earlier, like Persians really do care for each other, and we're very proud people as well. And I think we should remind ourselves that when we're applying, is like we're from Iran, we're from the Persian culture, and there's very few cultures on earth that are like that. And so leverage it, like tap into that confidence and all of the things that that culture brings to the table, because you do bring something to the table that a team would need. So I think that's something to be really proud of. And you know, we're here if you want to connect on LinkedIn and discuss further.
Kamyar, you're mute.
Sorry.
Oh, Payman.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I was saying that on behalf of myself and Parsi Quality Center, I would like to sincerely thank you. Again, I know how busy you guys are, so I appreciate your time and consideration to participate in this series. And also special thanks to Negin, who is not here, but assists us to put this program together. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Babak Jan, have a great evening. Kamyar Jan, have a great day. And we hope that we can continue this collaboration in near future.